Well, viewers, today we will be taking the rest of the Europeans, the British, the Danes and the French. So the next Europeans to come to India were the British or the English. It was in 1599 in London, a group of merchants established a society called as Adventurers Merchant Society of London, and later this society, by the Charter Act of 1600 issued by the Empress of England Elizabeth I, this society was given the monopoly of the trade for 15 years to the India as well as the East, and the society came to be renamed as East India Company. Also, this company was called as John Company because it was John Watt who was responsible to get the permission from the Empress, hence referred as the John Company. Later, after the death of Queen Elizabeth, it was under James I 1608 Charter made the monopoly of the trade towards the east of this company indefinite, and also James I sent an ambassador to the India to obtain the permission from the trade from the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. 1608, William Hawkins arrived in India and visited the court of Jahangir, the Mughal Emperor, and stayed there for 3 years. However, he failed to get the permission for the trade in India because the reason was the pressure imposed on Jahangir by the Portuguese. It so happened in 1611 there was a clash between the Portuguese and the British at Surat, resulting in where Commander Middleton defeated the Portuguese, which made Jahangir to give the permission for the trade for the British. 1612 was the first trading center of the British in India, which was established at Surat. This was the beginning of East India Company trade in India. Later, how this company prospered, which are the other important colonies established by East India Company, that we are going to study. Followed by this, 1615, we have another ambassador by name Thomas Roe coming to the court of Jahangir. His purpose of the visit was to obtain the permission for the trade throughout the Mughal Empire. And in order to please the Mughal Emperor Jahangir, he had brought the paintings made by different artists of England and Europe as the gifts to Jahangir, because Jahangir was very much interested in paintings. It was presenting these paintings, he was able to win the favor of Jahangir. And a good friendship, intimacy developed between these two. Jahangir used to call Thomas Roe affectionately as English Khan. And in the same way, Thomas Roe was very honorable towards Jahangir. 1617, the Farman. Farman means the order. The Farman 1617 issued by Jahangir permitted the British to trade throughout the Mughal Empire. And gradually we see here the new trade centers were established at Ahmedabad, Baroda, Agra and Bengal. That is mainly the spread of the British East India Company trade in India. Followed by this, it was in 1639. Britishers obtained a small village called Chennai Pura Pattanam on the east coast, and there they developed this place here, which came to be called as Madras. The Madras was established, and it was here the first fort of the British was built. Fort George was built at Madras. Later, here we find 1661, one of the important event leading to the here mainly acquisition of Bombay by the British. How they got this Bombay in India? Bombay was one of the places which was held by the Portuguese. 1661, matrimonial alliances was established between the British royal family and the Portuguese royal family. Prince Charles married Princess Catherine of Portugal, and the result of this marriage alliance was Portuguese transferred Bombay to the royal family of England here as a dowry. Bombay was received as a dowry by the British in 1661, and 1667 this was transferred to East India Company, and which was later developed as one of the important center. So 1667 onwards, Bombay was developed as an East India Company trade center. Lastly, 1690, how the Britishers acquired and established the city of Calcutta. 1690, Britishers obtained 3 villages from the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, namely Kolkata, Sultanati and Govindapura. So these 3 cities, their villages were obtained from the Mughals by the British. Later, all these 3 villages were merged, and the city of Calcutta was established by Job Charnock, the founder of the city of Calcutta. And it was here in 1697 the Fort William was built, which went on to become the headquarters of the East India Company in India. And Calcutta became the capital of the British in India, and it remained as the capital till 1911. In 1911, here it was the capital of the British in India. This is how the Britishers gradually spread their trade centers in India. But they never interfered in the political matters of India. They confined their activities here only to the trade. The trade and the commerce was carried out. So this is how mainly the Britishers here acquired the territories, the trade centers in India in the 17th century. Followed by the British, the next Europeans to arrive in India were the Danes from Denmark. The Danes from Denmark. They came to India. We find here the Danes arrived in India in 1616. The Danish East India Company was established with the patronage of the Denmark king by name here Christian IV. 1616, they established their first trade center in India at Chitaguppi, which comes in Tamil Nadu. The place is located in Tamil Nadu, which was the first trade center of the British, of the Dutch in India, the Danes in India. So, here we can find that the Danes who had come all the way from Denmark, but they never proved themselves as competent as the Britishers, Portuguese, or later the French. So their activities were confined only to the few places. So after here Chitaguppi, they established the trade center at Serapur in Bengal, which was the capital of the Danes in India. And followed by this, they also held Nicobar Islands. So today we know it as Andaman and Nicobar Islands. These were the possessions of the Danes in India. But they never proved themselves a match to other Europeans. They could not compete with the British nor with the French. So we find it was in 1845. The Danes sold their trade colonies to the British and they left India. So the departure was in 1845. They were the second Europeans to leave India. As you know that previously we had seen, Dutch were the first to leave India and the second were the Danes from India, 1845. And the third one here which we will be knowing is that it was the British who had left India in 1947. So the Danes had a very short tenure here from 1616 to 1845, but they did not make much progress in India. Followed by the Danes, here we have the last Europeans, the French. The French arrived in India 1664. 1664 was the arrival of the French. It was with the charter of the Emperor of France, Louis XIV. His Prime Minister, Jean Colbert, founded the French East India Company in 1664. French East India Company was established in 1664 by Jean Colbert, the Prime Minister of France. And they had their first trade center at Surat with the permission of the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb. It was at Surat they also established their first trading center. Later, the French established many of their colonies on the east coast of India, or what we call it as the Coromandel coast of India. So, next to it we have Valikondapuram. Valikondapuram was another important trade center of the French, located on the east coast, which was named by the French as Pondicherry. Today you know it under the name as Puducherry. Mainly Valikondapuram became Pondicherry or Puducherry, which went on to become the capital of the French in India. Followed by this, near Pondicherry, in the coast of Tamil Nadu, we have Karikal, another important trade center of the French. Followed by this, Yaman on the Andhra coast. Later, Masulipattana again on the Andhra coast. Balsora in Orissa and Chandranagar and Hooghly in Bengal. So these were the French trading centers in India. Chandranagar and Hooghly in Bengal. So we notice the French were also able to expand their activities in the 17th century. But they also confined their activities only to the trade and commerce, never tried to interfere in the political matters of India. So 17th century was the progress of these Europeans in India as the traders or as the merchants. The mainly trade and commerce no doubt prospered, but what we have the further consequences that has to be studied. So here, this particularly the topic advent of the Europeans, we are going to conclude here. And later we will see how the circumstances in India helped the Europeans to establish themselves as a political power. So in the conclusion, I would like to here sum up what we have studied. Like we had mainly started with the first Europeans, that is the Portuguese who came to India. The Portuguese arrived in India in 1498 and they departed at the last mainly in 1961. Then it was the Dutch 1602 and after 1759, after the Battle of Vedra, they departed from India. They were the first to leave India. Followed by that, Britishers came to India. Here in 1612 they had their trade center and they stayed in India up to 1947. Later, the Danes from 1616 to 1845. The Danes were mainly one of the Europeans who stayed in India. And the last were the French. 1664 they arrived and their departure was in 1954. So this was the arrival and the departure of these Europeans. And we have also seen which are their important trade centers. The important trade centers of these, mainly the Europeans in India. Before I conclude my topic on the advent of the Europeans, I would like to tell the viewers, the competitive examination aspirants, that what type of questions you may expect on this topic. Like here, if you take mainly all the level of competitive exams, how the question may appear. Like you have to give more concentration on the arrival years of all the Europeans. What is the date of their arrival and what is the date of their departure? This may appear as a question for the chronological order. In the chronological order, this question can be asked. This is one of the mainly the question. Pertaining to Portuguese, you may get here the questions like the Portuguese, here their arrival. Followed by that, who were the mainly here the Portuguese governors in India? Who was the famous governor? What is his achievements? Which are the important colonies of the Portuguese in India? Along with that, who were the kings who had mainly given shelter to the Portuguese? With which of the kings of India the Portuguese had good relations? So in this way, you have to prepare on this. And if you take little bit to the higher examinations, On the Portuguese, the question may appear here about their blue water policy, about here the issue of the cartridges. So also the impact of the Portuguese on India. So such questions may appear for higher level of examinations. So keeping this in view, students have to concentrate on these type of questions. Followed by that, here usually the questions here related to the British if you come. In the British, the question may be here like how they obtained the Bombay territory. So that which we have discussed already. Which are the different here mainly the colonies of the British. Where are the important forts of the British established? So you have to remember these things, and along with this try to see that who were those here mainly the British ambassadors who arrived in India, who was mainly the emperor in India who permitted them. So these are all the questions which you can expect. So these are the things where you have to give the concentration. And lastly, under the French, you can expect the questions about mainly their colonies and their spread. So these questions are to be prepared in this particularly the topic. Followed by this, now when we move to the next topic, which is related to the mainly conflict between these Europeans for the political power. So among these, the 5 Europeans who arrived in India, the struggle for the political power was between the French and the British, which marks an important event of the 18th century of Indian history. But however, not forgetting, before we go to the study of this conflict, you must know here that why these Europeans interfered in our Indian politics in 18th century. Till 18th century they had remained as a traders. But 18th century marks the entry of these Europeans in our Indian politics. So this has to be studied first. The reason for this is mainly the decline of one of the most powerful power of India, that is the Mughals. The decline of the Mughals in India marks the interference of the Europeans in the Indian politics. So before we go to the rivalry between the Europeans, here in my next the topic we will be discussing the decline of the Mughals and how it helped the mainly Europeans, particularly British and the French, to interfere in our Indian politics. So that we are going to continue in our next mainly the class. Well, we had mainly stopped with the advent of the Europeans to India, the different Europeans who came to India at different periods and how they had expanded their trade activities. So, but as we are going to here move further now, how these Europeans paved the way in the Indian politics, how they entered the Indian politics. So, for they were here mainly as a traders, merchants. So, they never interfered in the political matters. The reason behind this was the powerful Mughal Empire. This is the reason behind here the non-interference. But 1707, with the death of Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor, marks the beginning of the decline of the Mughals, which gave opportunity for the Europeans to interfere in our political matters. So first we are going to study what were the causes for the decline of these Mughals. Not forgetting at the same time, apart from the Mughals, another powerful community which was there in India was the Marathas. So 18th century marks the decline of both the powers, Maratha power as well as the Mughal power. So the vacuum was created in the political field, which here mainly was occupied by these Europeans. The struggle was there to establish that political supremacy. So we are going to study first here how here mainly the Mughal power declined in India. 1707 to 1857. This period is called as the history of later Mughals. They are known as the later Mughals. However, earlier in the medieval India, what we have the rule of Mughals from 1526 to 1707, that we call it as imperial period. This one is referred as the history of the later Mughals. So from 1707 to 1857. In the bracket I have given 1862. Why it is so, I will mainly come at the end. So this 150 years, the Mughal rule continued in India. But what we see, gradually the Mughal power began to decline. So what are those circumstances that led to the decline of this Mughal power in India after the death of Aurangzeb? So we will be studying those. However, according to the historians, it is said that the period of Aurangzeb itself marks the beginning of the decline of the Mughals. And the reason given is the religious policy of Aurangzeb. The religious policy followed by Aurangzeb here was a fanatic policy. He was very fanatic, never here appreciated the rise of any other religions, never favored any other religions. It was only here Islam, and in Islam it was the Sunni sect. So Aurangzeb's orthodox religious policy marks the beginning of the decline. Why it is so? So, as you know that Akbar, Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar was the one of the most successful monarch of the Mughal history. So we find Akbar was successful because of his tolerance religious policy, and which made him to gain the support of all other religions. So if we look at the history of Akbar, we notice most of his achievements were carried out by here mainly here the Rajputs in the war field, in the administrative matters. So it is the support of all other religious peoples, his tolerance, his broad-mindedness that proved the success of Akbar. But it was completely opposite in Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb tried to suppress other religions. Like if you study the Aurangzeb rule, we can find at the beginning of his rule, he issued a farman stating that no new Hindu temples to be constructed and no existing temples to be renovated. He abolished the Jaroka system in the administration as it was a Hindu custom. He prohibited the celebration of Hindu festivals in the Mughal palaces. Likewise, here we find 1675. Here one of his religious policy which made him the most orthodox, a rigid monarch, was the assassination of the ninth Guru of the Sikh religion, Tegh Bahadur. 1879, the reintroduction of Jizya tax. So these are the examples to show that Aurangzeb was an orthodox. His fanaticism, which marks here the decline of the Mughals, as many of other religious sects turned hostile to the Mughals. This is the reason how the religious policy becomes one of the cause for the decline of the Mughals. This is the first here mainly the cause. The second one we are going to take is weak successors of Aurangzeb. Weak successors of Aurangzeb. After Aurangzeb, the successors were very weak, inefficient. Viewers, you may get one question here. They may ask you the chronological order of the Mughal emperors who ruled here. Or they may ask you the events and ask them to arrange in the chronological order. It is here a question which you have to concentrate. You should know all the Mughal emperors who have ruled from year 1707 to 1857. Just to mention their names, we are going to study. Aurangzeb was succeeded by Bahadur Shah first, 1707 to 1712, followed by Jahandar Shah, 1712 to 13, Farooq Siyar, 1713 to 1719, Muhammad Shah, 1719 to 48, Ahmad Shah, 1748 to 54, Alamgir II, 1754 to 59, Shah Alam II, 1759 to 1806, Akbar II, 1806 to 1837, and the last one, Bahadur Shah II, or also called as Bahadur Shah Zafar, 1837 to 1857. However, he died in 1862 here in Rangoon, that is old name to Burma, and now it is called as the Myanmar. So the place is located Rangoon in Burma or Myanmar today. There he met his death in 1862. 1857 marks the end of the Mughal rule in India. So these were the rulers who ruled after Aurangzeb. All were inefficient, weak rulers, neglected the administration, never bothered about the welfare of the people. So as such, we notice here the administrative disorder was there, administrative chaos was there, disintegration of the administration was there. So these rulers spent much of their time in luxuries. For instance, Muhammad Shah has been called as one of the most pleasure-loving emperor of the Mughal history. He has been nicknamed as Rangila Muhammad Shah. So this type of mainly the attitude of the Mughal emperors, we find mainly the administrative breakdown, and it resulted in the decline of the Mughals there. That is the second reason why the Mughal power declined from India. The weak successors. As there were weak successors, this resulted in the split of Mughal Empire. The split of the Mughal Empire. The Subhadars in the Mughal Empire, looking at the weakness at the center, they decided to establish themselves as independent rulers in their respective subhas. So this resulted in the breakup of the Mughal Empire, split of the Mughal Empire, and rise of autonomous independent states. So it was here mainly the empire became disintegrated. small independent kingdoms emerged. So one has to know this. If at all at the center, if the emperors were powerful, they would not have allowed the disintegration. But because of the center was weak, the disintegration here took place. So from the huge Mughal Empire, so when 1707, when Aurangzeb died, there were 21 subhas, 21 provinces in the Mughal Empire. A huge empire it was. Slowly we find the provincial governors, or they are called as the subhadars, they started becoming independent. The independent states were established. To give some examples, 1722, the Subha of Awadh became independent and the state of Awadh was established under the leadership of Sadat Khan. Sadat Khan was the founder of the state of Awadh in 1722 with Faizabad as the capital. Faizabad was the capital, 1722 it was written. And he assumed the title as the Nawab. So the rulers of Awadh came to be called as the Nawabs. 1723, in the same way, the Suba of Bengal emerged as an autonomous state under Murshid Quli Khan. Under Murshid Quli Khan, 1723. The Bengal state was established with Murshidabad as the capital. Murshidabad was the capital. And Murshid Quli Khan became the independent Nawab of Bengal, 1723. In the same way, 1724, in the south, the state of Hyderabad was established by Nizam ul Mulk Asaf Jah, the founder of the state of Hyderabad, who styled himself as the Nizam of Hyderabad. So, like this, the breakup of the Mughal Empire, which could not be stopped by the Mughal emperors, resulted in the decline of the power. The split of the Mughal Empire is also one of the causes here for the decline of the Mughals. Followed by this was the foreign invasions. Foreign invasions were carried out. India was subjected to the foreign invasions, and the Mughal emperors could not stop these foreigners, and the result was the economic ruination of India. The foreigners carried away the wealth, which brought economic instability to the Mughals. So when economic instability came, naturally politically also they lost mainly the power. So who were these foreigners who invaded India during this period? So one of the most important invasion was 1738 and 39. It was Nadir Shah of Iran who invaded India, 1738 and 39. And at this time, you have to remember this, who was the Mughal emperor? So not forgetting, so they may ask you, when Nadir Shah invaded, who was the Mughal emperor? So you must remember who was the Mughal emperor there. 1738 to 39, we find it was Muhammad Shah, who was the Mughal emperor, during whose period this event took place. Nadir Shah, here mainly looting the wealth of the Mughals, here he returned back to his native. The most precious things which were carried by Nadir Shah were the peacock throne of Shah Jahan, which we call it as Takht-e-Taus. That was taken by Nadir Shah. Followed by this, the precious diamond from India was carried, which was named as Koh-i-Noor by Nadir Shah himself. Nadir Shah gave this name Koh-i-Noor. Kohi means mountain, Noor means light. So the reflection of the light from the diamond was just like a mountain. So he named it as Koh-i-Noor. So we find that the wealth was drained here by Nadir Shah, which brought economic crisis to the Mughals. Later, it was from 1748 to 61, we had Shah Abdali, the Amir of Afghanistan, who invaded India. The Afghanistan kings are called as Amir. Shah Abdali invaded India here from 1748 to 61 4 times. For 4 times the invasion was there, which also brought the ruination to the Mughals. But the invasion of Shah Abdali to be remembered is that here it was one of the power of India which had the setback. A fatal blow was given to the Maratha power in India. In his last invasion, Shah Abdali defeated the Marathas in the Third Battle of Panipat, which took place in 1761. Shah Abdali defeated the Marathas, which crippled the power of the Marathas in India. So it was on one side the declining power of the Mughals, and mainly the power of the Marathas was suppressed. This mainly the condition was very helpful for the Europeans here to establish themselves in the political field. So the foreign invasions of Nadir Shah and Shah Abdali, these two were disastrous economically to the Mughals. Hence, economic instability led to the decline of the Mughals. And lastly, we will be seeing it is the rise of the British. So this is the last cause here mainly for the decline of the Mughals. How ultimately the Britishers put an end to the Mughal power. So we are going to study the rise of the British. How Britishers became powerful in India. So we are going to study the rise of the British under different stages. The first stage we are going to study is Anglo-French Wars, or popularly you call it as Carnatic Wars. Anglo-French Wars or Carnatic Wars, which was fought between the British and the French for political supremacy, and it resulted in the victory of the British. This is the first one we are going to study. Secondly, we are noting about the Battle of Plassey, 1757. Plassey is the name of a place in Bengal where it was fought between the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dawla, and the British, which is said to have mainly laid the foundation for the British political rule in India. 1757, the Battle of Plassey. The third stage will be 1757 to 1772, the Bengal British governors. Bengal British governors we are going to study. How they were able to give the stability to the rule of the British in Bengal. So we are going to start it from mainly the Robert Clive, Vansittart, and the other important here the governors. So we are going to make a study of the governors, how they laid the foundation for that. And then we are going to study the rule of the governor generals in India. The governor generals were mainly beginning from 1773 to 1857. The different governor generals we are going to study, how they laid the foundation for the British rule and how they built the British colonial empire of India. So under 4 stages we are going to note about the rise of the British. Once again to repeat, Anglo-French wars, the Battle of Plassey, followed by Bengal governors, the governor generals. So under these we are going to study the rise of the British, who ultimately in 1857, one of the event which took place in India, the revolt of 1857, popularly referred by some historians as the Sepoy Mutiny or the first war of Indian independence. So in this revolt, the last Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah II or Bahadur Shah Zafar here was mainly declared as a traitor, and he was tried at the Red Fort. A trial here was conducted on him, which is popularly called in history as the trial of the last Mughal monarch. And finding him guilty, the royal couple Bahadur Shah II and his queen Zeenat Mahal both were exiled to Rangoon, where they spent the rest of the time, and in 1862 the death of Bahadur Shah II took place. So it is the Britishers who have ultimately put an end to the Mughal power. How they did it, we are going to study in detail in the rise of the British in our next class.